Join me today as I finally get around to painting the LRDG Ford V8, which was kindly sent to me by the fantastic team at Early War Miniatures. I've always been fond of the LRDG, otherwise known as the Long Range Desert Group. They are a fascinating topic to research, and I just knew I had to get this truck on the channel as a painting guide. So with that in mind, I'd love to know if you are also really keen on learning about the LRDG and if you enjoyed this painting tutorial. Today we are going to tackle a Ford V8 that was part of the LRDG, so the Long Range Desert Group, and it's produced by the fantastic team at Early War Miniatures. Now some of you might be thinking, I've seen that before, and you would be correct. I did a review video many months ago, which is bad on my part because I haven't followed it up since, that covered this. So if you want to see that, there'll be a link to the video in the description, as well as you can go and just check out my playlist. So I did touch on just before that I have a review video, but this is what we're going to be painting up. So it's a resin vehicle. It's part of the Early War Miniatures LRDG range, which is phenomenal, might I add. So if you want to get some LRDG vehicles, definitely go and check that out. So to start off with, I'm going to make sure that I prime my vehicle with black. I'm just using a Tamiya Radokan black. You can use Warhammer, whatever paints you've got. Then I'm going to spray it with dark yellow too. And I'm thinning the paint slightly. I always thin Tamiya paints when I'm spraying them. It doesn't matter what size needle I'm using. Whenever I use Tamiya paints, I'm always thinning them down. This was probably thinned down at a 2:1, so two parts paint, and 1 part thinners. And you can see this dark yellow too actually acts as a really nice sort of sandy colour. And then I'm going with NATO green. So I'm actually going to put this in quite an unusual sort of scheme that was common for this particular squadron. I'll leave all the information to that in the video description. And I'm painting it in NATO green, so just irregular stripes going across the bonnet. The whole point of these random colours, so I'm going to flat flesh now, was to sort of break up the silhouette of the vehicle on those really hazy sunny days where you can just make out an object on the horizon. All these colours were meant to supposedly break up the vehicle nicely. So we're going with flat flesh. You can see it looks quite white in this, but it is a pinky colour. We don't want to go with a pink because it just looks silly. A flat flesh is quite nice for what you're trying to achieve here. And then finally I'm using light blue, and you can see the blues just coming out. Sorry, the angles aren't really great here, but you're just mixing and matching. You're just going over what you've done and you're just adding in squiggly lines all over the place. Obviously you don't need to do it inside of the cab because you're going to be putting storage in there anyway, so just go with that. Once you've got those colours down, you want to give it a semi-gloss varnish. Then I'm moving on to a wash. So this particular wash is using a oil wash, and I use Abteilung 502 odorless thinners to water that down until you get like a wash consistency. Once you've got that, you can then do a pin wash. So you can see that I've got a really pointy brush, and I'm just going along and focusing on the areas that need a wash, not covering the whole thing in the actual oil wash itself. Now oil washes do take quite a while to dry, especially once you've cleaned up. So this is what I'm doing now. I'm cleaning up and I'm also blending the wash into the vehicle. So I'm getting my brush with some of that odorless thinners and I'm just working it in and removing where there's a big pool of it. Where there's just a little pool, you can blend it in and it makes the area look worn. It's a really nice little weathering trick without having to go too crazy with sort of weathering aids and the like. With that done, I'm moving on to the wheels. So we're using black grey for the wheels. And just as a side note, I will be doing a lot more in-depth video on how I airbrush, specifically using Tamiya paints in the future. So don't stress, that video is going to come out, so keep an eye out for that one in the future. Then for some of the tarps, I use Russian uniform World War II. Also, for that dark grey, I was using that on the metal objects like the machine gun here that you can see in the picture. I'm also using that Russian uniform World War II for the ammunition box. You can use a different shade of green if you want to change it up. And also the windscreen covers here. So the windscreen was just like a U shape almost, or half a circle, but it had a tarp over it, so I've painted that one up. Well, not a tarp, a cover. And then for the seats, I'm using German camo medium brown. They were a brown seat. I believe, from the reference photos I've seen. So German camo medium brown is just a really good medium brown. And then for some of the backpacks that they've got and the webbing and all that, all the equipment that they've got hanging off their trucks, just use khaki. This came with a load of storage. I'm not going to show you how I paint all of that because I've covered that in all different types of videos in the past. But yeah, you know, the paints I'm using now you can use for that. There's also straps that are used for holding in tarps and bags and stuff. I'm using khaki for them as well. As also the cover on the machine gun here, I'm using khaki for that one too. Once that's done, I'm going to paint the actual canteen in English uniform. So British or Commonwealth water bottles had like a felt material on them that did look like sort of an English uniform colour. So that works really nicely. Now I'm going to go over and wash all of what we've just painted. I'm going to use no oil and technical medium at a 1:1 ratio. That's just going to ensure that the wash isn't so sharp, and it's going to act as in between a glaze and a wash. So in the recesses it's going to be really dark, but on the flat surfaces it's not going to be too dark. No oil is a black wash, so it will dry really dark if you use it just straight out the bottom. So it's essential that we thin that down if we can. Now it's all about going over the colours that we just put down. So this is our first layer, if you will. So we're going over the base colour and we're leaving that dark wash in the recesses. Now with resin vehicles, they're not as sharp as plastic vehicles, they're not as crisp as plastic vehicles, so some of those details are going to be missing, or they're going to be hard to see. So sometimes you can use your imagination when you're painting. You can actually make stuff up like creases and that just by using different layers. So now we're moving on to a 2:1 with German camo beige, World War II, using that Russian uniform at a 2:1 ratio. So now it's just making that color a little bit brighter and a little bit lighter, and we can start adding in our layer now, and you just start picking out the raised edges, and you can see the folds and the creases within that bag. You can pick them out. On the flat surfaces you can just pick a sort of area of that object you want to focus on, and you can just start scratching that in. And then if you want to go even crazier for the final highlight, you can go at a 1:1 ratio of that same color that we had just used before, and this is literally just a little line on those raised edges just to really make these things stand out just that little bit more. These bright colors are going to help. I do go a bit too mental with the Tamiya weathering powders later on, so these bright colors will help these bits of storage stick out a bit more. And if you want to know where I got these decals from, they were from a chap on Facebook that did these as a one-off, so unfortunately they're not commercially available. Now we're going over the khaki, and just another note on the decals as well, guys. I do have a decal application video, so I completely skipped that in this step. If you want to see how I apply decals, you can watch that video. Also, my latest British Airborne 172 Jeep video also features that, so that's a more up-to-date video, so you can check that one out too. I'll leave all of the videos in the description so you can easily find them if you want to see how I apply decals. Then for the khaki highlight or second layer, I use a 2:1 ratio. So you can go to a 1:1 ratio after this if you want to give it a final highlight. It really depends what you want to do. But now it's all just about making this particular cover on the machine gun pop a bit more. Same with the straps, you're just adding in a line on the strap. You can see on this flat surface, I'm just scratching lines in the middle and just leaving that darker color on the outer edge of that cylinder. And then that bag is the same sort of thing in the middle, and then that where there is details that you can paint in, that's what I'm going to do. So I said it before, we go to a 1:1 ratio now. So this is just a highlight. This is literally just those raised edges that you're going to be focusing on. So this particular part shouldn't take too long. You're just adding in details that you can see, or sorry, highlighting details that you can see. And yeah, you can see that I'm adding a little line here and a little line there just to break up that cover just a little bit more. Now we go over those water bottles again with English uniform. You See, I'm just adding in little details here. I think there's 3 water bottles hanging off here, so you got to paint them all in. Then you can go with English uniform and khaki grey at a 1-to-1 ratio. You can just skip this, you can just go straight to khaki grey if you want to, but I was trying to just slowly bring it out to that really bright highlight colour. Some of this is overkill, guys, so again, this video is just for you guys to change it how you want it. So here you go, I'm going with that khaki grey for the final highlight. So you adapt this tutorial to what's going to suit you best. You might not agree with the colours I picked, even for the base coat for the actual vehicle. You think they might be too light or unrealistic. Yeah, that's up to you. And then for the water bottle lids, or the tops of the water bottle, I use old wood. And then I highlight that with Iraqi sand. It's literally just a line on, you see I've just painted a little line on the top just to make that top just a little bit more. Old wood, English uniform. They're not similar colours, but when from a distance, they don't look that different. Now this is probably overkill. I'm going over the seat now with German camo medium brown. The reason I did this is because I was unsure if I was actually going to put people in the seats or not. If you know you're going to have crew in each seat, this is just overkill. You could maybe paint the edges where you know there might be a bit of the seat showing, but the rest of it just leave. You're just wasting time. That's why I didn't go through and highlight these. Now with the metal, I use German grey, and this is my first layer. So you can see there's plenty of details on this gun. This gun is really nicely done, so you've got plenty of details that you can pick out there to make it pop. And obviously with the storage, if there's any other metal items, you can paint them. You can also use this black grey as a dry brush for the wheels. You can see I'm giving it a good dry brush. And then I go over it with black grey and basalt grey at a 1-to-1 ratio. So this is my final highlight now. I'm avoiding silvers for the metal objects. You can use some silvers if you want to. I just find they look a bit too unrealistic. Having fired these era guns in my many trips to Vegas, I know that they weren't full of silvers like I've done in the past, so I think black grey works nicely. It doesn't stand out as much, but it is really up to you what's your cup of tea, really. And then I dry brush the wheels in this colour, but don't go too mad. You're going to be putting Tamiya weathering powder on this. These were dusty vehicles, so you're going to be weathering these tyres to reflect that. So as I'm talking about it, that's what we're going to do. We're using Tamiya Weathering Master Set A, so that's got a sand, a light sand and a mud. Obviously we're not going to be using mud. You can use a little bit of mud just for like a darker colour on the bottom, but you're going to be focused on the sandy colour. So I'm using like the more orange looking sands. This is probably more like Iraqi sand if we're converting it to a Vallejo colour. And you can see that I've really going to town. Literally everything other than the crew are getting a coat of this sand because they're out in the desert for a long time. They're going to be disgusting. They're going to stink, the people that are driving it, but the vehicles are going to look awful. Going to be full of sand. So yeah, try and reflect that if you can. And the very last thing you want to do is glue on the storage. And once you've done that, you can give it a varnish of a flat clear to get rid of that glossy look, and bosh, you have now got yourself an LRDG vehicle to go and check out what the Germans and Italians are up to and report back to Allied HQ. And there we go. So that's our Ford V8 patrol car for the long range desert group, kindly sent to me by the fantastic team at Early War Miniatures. So as I've said, they've got a superb LRDG range that is really worth checking out and potentially investing in if you are into 20mm LRDG miniatures. Huge thank you goes out to the team as well as Patreon and YouTube channel members. You guys are absolutely fantastic and you really do help videos like this continue to grow and help me put out decent content. Let me know below what 20mm vehicle you would like to see painted in the next video tutorial, and other than that, I'm going to leave it here and I will catch you at the next one.